But we're talking hockey now with the Daily Faceoffs. Frank Seravalli, the president of the Pro Hockey Writers Association. Frank, appreciate the time, man. Always good to see you and hear from you. And if I'm not mistaken, you broke the story this morning. The NHL and the Players Association have mutually agreed not to send the players to Beijing. What's the reaction been like to that story?
Well, I think the reaction from players is one of disappointment. I mean, you think back to the last best on best tournament that's been played for NHL players. It's the 2016 World Cup of Hockey. And back then we had Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid playing for Team North America. They haven't yet had a chance to really represent their country in a true best on best tournament among NHL players. And that's a shame for all of us. So there was definitely some disappointment. The players have been resigned to this fact, watching these things unfold over the last week, Rod. And now it's just a matter of time until we hear the official announcement that comes after the NHL and the PA jointly notify the IOC that they have plans to pull out from participating in the Olympics this year. So certainly disappointing news for all involved, perhaps maybe even in some ways, except for the NHL. They had made it clear what they wanted to see from this season. They did not want to send players to the Olympics. I don't think this is a moment, though, where the NHL is dancing around saying, ha, we told you so, or we're glad that you're not going. I think they understand the disappointment from the player side as well.
Well, Frank, I don't know that it ever gets reported what the actual vote was unless you know, but I'm just wondering if you could take us a little deeper into what went behind it, because you had Connor McDavid calling it unsettling, the idea of going, saying that last week, but then you got Steven Stamkos saying he wanted to go. How much of a split was there amongst the players on this issue?
There actually was no formal vote here. In this case, the NHLPA is working with the league, and they have certain parameters that they had to live with in their agreement with the NHL, going back to the collective bargaining agreement. And the agreement always was the NHL is willing to send its players to the Olympics so long as there's not a material disruption to the NHL schedule. We've now had 50 games postponed in the NHL, including one today between the Flyers and Washington Capitals. The late game tonight between the division-leading Tampa Bay Lightning and Vegas Golden Knights, that game is also in jeopardy. The Vegas Golden Knights, Rod, are bracing for some positive tests within their group. We could see, this holiday break beginning even earlier than the NHL had envisioned, and with 50 games now postponed, potentially 51 this season, including 45 or 46 in the last 8 days alone. The players saw the writing on the wall here. We're talking about 5% of the season schedule or close to it that's been disrupted to this point. Those games are going to need to be made up at some point. And what you're dealing with is an NHL schedule where there's not a lot of runway. There's no extra buffer zone that's in place this year. They want to get back to a typical hockey calendar, trying to avoid going deep into the summer as they have previously. And the draft date is set, free agent date is set. They need to start next season on time, and that leaves not a lot of wiggle room for players to really be in a spot where they can say, hey, look, we think we can get the Olympics in and the full 82-game season. It needs to be 82-game season first. Olympics are second priority.
Frank, apologies for gushing a little bit. I'm excited to talk to you. A big fan, and you're insider. You're probably the number one insider. Because of what you all just said, it seems like this caught the NHL off guard. Like, how chaotic is it behind the scenes right now that they didn't see this coming, this chaos that they're dealing with this week, not just with the Olympics, but all the postponed games?
Honestly, I'd refer to it as controlled chaos, because I think when you look at last season and how the NHL got through it, the highest number of players that were ever on the COVID protocol list is something like 55. Right now, we're approaching 130 players that are active on the COVID protocol list. It did certainly surprise the league as the calendar turned to December in terms of the uptick in positive cases. You're looking at a player population that is fully vaccinated with the exception of one player. And they were not expecting to be hit with this many positive tests, but the notion that they've sort of been living day by day since this pandemic started is to sort of be prepared for anything, be able to react to anything that pops up. So they certainly didn't want to be in the position to be postponing games. I'm sure teams that had to really trudge through it this season to start, like the New York Islanders missing so many players before they finally got shut down. there's lots of teams that are going to be unhappy here and say, well, how come this team has a game postponed? They're only missing 2 or 3 players. The NHL and the way that they test these players and the way that they break down the test results, they have a really good idea of exactly how contagious that player was, who he was spending time with, how likely it is to ripple through the team. And so they're making decisions on a case-by-case basis. And now that both sides know that they're not going to the Olympics and they're going to have a little bit of wiggle room in the schedule, not a ton because there's not a lot of building availability, that they have a little bit more room now to make up some of these games. And so you see this Capitals-Flyers game postponed tonight. That's just another reason to do so, is let's try and avoid as big a breakout as we can, an outbreak.
Love the chat, Frank. You could go on all day, but because of time restrictions, I only got one more question for you, or time for one more, and it's Daily Faceoff. Tell us about it and how much you're enjoying doing it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Tough decision to leave TSN last season, but really thrilled and fortunate to be at Daily Faceoff. And we want to be an all-encompassing hockey digital platform. Love what you do with your show. We've got a similar daily live show that's 12 noon Eastern every day on dailyfaceoff.com and YouTube. You can find it on Twitter. The viewers and people that have been coming to us, we're super appreciative and grateful. And we're looking to build that out. More shows, more podcasts, more talent, more writing, more breaking news to become that all-encompassing, independent digital hockey platform. So appreciate you allowing me to plug that. And looks like you are enjoying a nice warm day in South Florida.
There's no doubt, Frank, and I think of watching you on the shores of Boca Raton following the NHL governors meetings. You know the feeling. So yeah, and I can see how much you're enjoying it. The freedom. So good for you, man. So happy for you guys. Merry Christmas, Frank, and we'll see you along this NHL trail.
Thanks. All the best, Rod. Take care.
NHL insider Frank Seravalli joining us from Daily Faceoff with some interesting talk there.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching the RP Show on YouTube. And don't forget, we're live daily on YouTube from noon to 2 Eastern. If you like what you see, hit subscribe. And if you like the program, check around for other segments of the Rod Pedersen Show here on YouTube.